This is LEGO 75258. Anakin's Podracer. Yes, it's cool. What I want to do first is to get this Podracer in the air. These transparent bricks work well and are good for a display. But it doesn't seem so difficult to get it fly. Let's see. Since I plan to suspend it with a fishing line, I remove unnecessary parts and securely connect the two engines using another brick to keep them fixed in place while in the air. This work is enjoyable because it makes me feel like I'm maintaining this machine. I used to envy my friend when I heard that he had once taken apart and reassembled a car engine, but now that I'm doing something similar, I think it's okay to say that as well. So, now it's ready for takeoff. How about this? For me, it's almost what I imagined. Although the fishing lines are visible, this one allows me to recall the movie scene more vividly. The way it's swaying slowly seems to represent the state of it before the start. I really like the junkyard, scrap-built feel of this Podracer that Anakin put together. But I've realized that the best part of it is the open cockpit. For me, when it comes to a race machine, the cockpit should be open. That is because, just look at this. A beautiful green F1 machine is AMR22, made by Aston Martin F1 team in 2022. The driver is Sebastian Vettel. The scale is 1/43 by Spark model. I've been huge F1 fan for over 25 years. I think what makes F1 car truly cool is its open cockpit. I love watching the driver's helmet constantly moving as they race. That's exactly why I like the Podracer too. So this is an interesting two-shot of racing machines from the world of science fiction and one from the real world. The reason I'm looking at this old Podracer now is this mech. In the past video I built this, based on the LEGO Darth Vader mech, which features his TIE fighter. Where is the TIE fighter? Its cockpit. So let's transform. I'm satisfied with this mech, but for me, if Darth Vader and Anakin are the same person, then his best machine has to be Podracer. Of course, its visual appeal is the reason, but what I like even more is the fact that he created it himself. So today, I want to build a mech based on the Podracer. Before starting the build, I searched for Podracer online to get a clearer image of my new mech. I was surprised to find that this Podracer has so much detailed information which isn't mentioned in the movie, like these. The most distinctive feature, this large engine is Model 620C. Manufactured by a company called Undio and Ulza Repulsor Lift. These yellow blades are as scoops for controlling attitude during braking and cornering. There is no manufacturer name, so I think Anakin made these using parts of that scrapyard. The emblems at the points were painted by R2-D2. I think that's why it is blue, the color of R2, going well with yellow blades. These are the control cables that connects the engines to the cockpit, made by a company called Steelton. This is the energy binder which links both engines together. This intense bright light reminds me of his lightsaber. That being the case, it makes sense that this color is close to red. The max speed is 947 km per hour, almost the same as a jet airplane. And the max altitude is 105 meters. These engines are not only extremely powerful, but also visually stunning. So it could be displayed in a museum like this. I could spend endless hours standing in front of that exhibit, simply admiring it, and in fact, that is exactly what I did. In front of the F1 engine on display at Honda Collection Hall, located in Motegi Town, Tochigi Prefecture, Japan. So how should I build my mech? I want to take each Podracer's specs into my mech as faithfully as possible. The coloring won't be yellow but will have a black base while keeping some blue. I also want to maintain the scrap-built look, preserving the feel of using discarded parts. and the engines must be the main feature. I think they work similarly to a jet airplane engine. That takes in a large amount of air from the front, compresses it, then burns that air inside to generate high-thrust energy expelled from the back. So following this system, my mech will have these engines on its back for flight and will also be able to move forward at high speed by tilting the engines to the front. Now that I have set the goal for my build, so in movies or other forms of storytelling, characters and machine often have detailed backstories or settings, but most of these details are never revealed to the audience inside the stories. How many people knows the name of engine manufacturer for pod racers? So, the task of thinking about such information may seem meaningless, but I can understand that a storyteller or a machine designer can't help but think about the details. I also assign various roles to each brick when I build, imagining, for example, a brick as a battery and another as a camera lens. But I think it's important to engage in such meaningless actions by your own will because I read this book, Bullshit Jobs, a Theory. A bullshit job is meaningless or unnecessary wage labor in which the worker is forced to pretend that their work has a purpose. Examples include PR personnel, corporate lawyers, and middle managers. Many people suffer from these well-paid jobs. I can understand this because I'm also an employee and frequently deal with pointless paperwork or pretend to be doing something valuable in the office. But I think when you engage in something meaningless by choice, rather than obligation, it adds richness to your life. Or, whether you can call your life rich depend on how actively you engage in such meaningless activities of your own accord in daily life. My Lego building has no meaning to the world, but I do it simply because I want to. And each moment I place a brick makes my life a bit richer. For me, that's enough. But, is it really okay to affirm your life based on something very personal? Then I'd like to intentionally broaden the scope of my discussion just a little, returning to F1. Isn't F1 the most meaningless activity? So many talented people dedicate themselves to driving faster and building faster machines. But what is the actual meaning of that? Here is my answer. The fact that so many fans passionately follow F1 shows that people want to be a part of the biggest meaningless events in the world. So I can say that F1 is interesting precisely because it's meaningless, and we can see drivers or mechanics fully committing themselves to such meaningless tasks. So I will watch every race this year again without anyone telling me to. In other words, I believe that even meaningless things, when taken far enough, can grow into a major movement and enrich the lives of many people. Of course, I don't have such power or influence, but at the very least, I hope to remain on the fringes of such a movement by building Lego or watching F1. As a fan of both, thank you Lego and F1. By the way, regarding Vettel, the driver of the F1 machine which I mentioned earlier, as far as I know, he is the first driver to change frequently his helmet design by the race. Even when modifying helmet designs during the season became a regulatory violation, he insisted on using his preferred designs even if it meant paying fines, which left a strong impression on me. Nowadays, this regulation no longer exists, and seeing a variety of helmet designs has become one of the things I enjoy about F1. While drivers have their own basic helmet designs, they often make various modifications throughout the season, primarily reflecting the characteristics of the race locations. Recently I learned from the movie Air that a similar situation once occurred in NBA. In the past, the NBA had regulations to prevent shoes from being too flashy. However, Michael Jordan and Nike deliberately violated these rules by wearing colorful shoes in games, ultimately changing the culture. While their decision was primarily driven by marketing, it's also true that stylish shoes now add a new level of enjoyment not only to the NBA but also to the various sports worldwide. I believe that design also has another aspect. Take a look at this. This is the helmet Sebastian Vettel used during the Japanese Grand Prix in October 2011. In March of that year, Japan experienced a massive earthquake and tsunami in the Tohoku region, causing significant damage. In a show of support, Vettel designed his helmet with Japanese national flag and the Chinese character for Bond, encouraging Japanese fans during a difficult time. In that race, other drivers and teams also expressed their support for Japan through their helmets and on the cars. I was deeply moved by the fact that the vast F1 community made such gestures, and it made me realize one of the significant roles that global motorsports can play What I want to say is that, as a person on the fringe of design, I find it exciting and gratifying to witness moments when design influences the course of things, whether in the real-time events or films. If I say that is why I build LEGO today, that sounds a bit exaggerated, but perhaps there is some truth to it. My build will soon come to an end, but as a final brief topic, I want to touch on another aspect of the Podracer setting. That is, Anakin and other racers are not only racers but also the mechanics who build their own machines. As a person who admires mechanics, I like this setting. It also reminds me of Monkey Turn, a comic about powerboat racing. I first learned from the comic that in powerboat racing, the racers themselves are responsible for maintaining their boat engines. The story includes scenes where the characters struggle to shape their propellers, which I particularly enjoyed. As I build LEGO, I can't help but feel that I'm experiencing the same sense of craftsmanship as Anakin and the boat racers. In boat racing, racers' helmet used to be simple and matched the color of each boat. However, the regulations changed, allowing racers to design their helmets freely. The author mentioned that this change made the drawing process more challenging, but I believe it was positive development. The change made it easier to convey the individuality of each character and enhance the visual vibrancy of the artwork. The main character is a passionate man, had a flame pattern on his helmet, and I personally enjoyed these unique design differences as well. Now, although this has taken longer than I expected, the assembly process has finally reached its final stage.